The decision was made without a public warning, without a family discussion, and without Meghan being given the chance to defend herself. Inside a private royal office, King Charles placed his signature beneath an amendment that removed her name from the official royal trust. One stroke of a pen ended years of uncertain association, and when the news reached California, Meghan's stunned reaction revealed how deeply she believed that connection still protected her. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles remained alone after the advisor left. The official royal trust, a fictional structure linking family members to charitable access, ceremonial privileges, advisory standing, and interests, had kept Meghan's name attached after she stepped away from frontline duty. That entry carried weight. It suggested that, despite distance and conflict, one bridge between California and the Crown had survived. The king had ordered a review earlier after disputes over who could invoke royal association, seek institutional support, or join projects carrying family approval. Every name came under scrutiny, yet Meghan's became the most dangerous. Charles reread the amendment, paused over the line, and understood the cost. He was not correcting a register. He was cutting one of the last official ties between his daughter-in-law and the monarchy. Then he signed. The amendment took effect immediately. Meghan lost the trust protections, privileges, advisory position, and any future claim to participate through marriage or previous service. A clause stated that her continued inclusion risked conflicting representation of the crown, meaning outsiders might mistake her independent work for royal authority. The wording was cold, but its message felt personal. Her public identity had not merely been questioned, it had been judged. Meghan received the notice during a quiet morning at home. She read it once, then again, gripping the table as disbelief gave way to humiliation. "Did Harry know?" she asked. The question carried more fear than anger, because the decision was complete. There was no meeting to request, no appeal to prepare, and no time to change the king's mind. Harry received a separate message instructing him not to contact the administrators. He called Meghan at once, furious that husband and wife had been deliberately divided. Charles had anticipated his reaction and built distance into the announcement itself, yet the signature was only the ending. When Meghan demanded the complete amendment, she discovered that someone near the monarch had spent months building the case against her. But before Meghan could challenge the signature, she needed to understand which members of the family had stood behind Charles, and which one had quietly refused to protect her. Behind the trust amendment stood three people bound together by marriage, blood, and years of unresolved hurt. Charles saw a monarchy he was responsible for protecting. Harry saw a father making another decision without hearing him. Meghan saw an institution reducing her life to a name that could simply be crossed out. Yet the deepest wound came from the possibility that this was never solely about royal policy. It was about whom the king still considered family. Charles carried two burdens, and neither allowed him peace. As sovereign, he was responsible for protecting the crown's authority. As a father, he knew every institutional decision could wound his son. The official royal trust, a protected structure linking family members to charitable standing and ceremonial recognition, had forced those roles into collision. Keeping Meghan inside risked suggesting royal approval. Removing her could destroy what remained between father and son. Meghan turned to Harry with one question. "Did your father ever intend to keep me inside?" He opened his mouth, then stopped. That silence hurt more than denial, because it told her he had feared this outcome longer than he admitted. Harry knew his wife's removal was not separate from him. It showed that marriage no longer guaranteed shared recognition, and that the palace could divide their identities whenever survival demanded it. Charles met Queen Camilla privately after signing. She listened as he confessed that Harry would see punishment where advisors saw clarity. Camilla answered that delay would only make the rupture crueler. The king turned away. Her logic was sound, but logic could not soften the fact that his son would hear rejection in every line. Harry called his father's private number. Charles answered, yet neither man spoke for several seconds. Then the Duke asked why Meghan had not been warned. The monarch replied that she had been given years to understand the boundary between personal freedom and official representation. Harry's voice tightened. He said freedom should not require humiliation. Then came the revelation. Harry learned his own name remained in a separate section because he had been born into the royal family. Meghan had been removed, but he remained connected. She understood the danger. Future negotiations could pass through him alone, forcing choices between inherited status and loyalty to his marriage. That fear changed the conversation. Meghan began reviewing the months before the amendment, while Harry searched messages and dates beside her. One incident rose above everything else: a private charity reception where she had made a request palace officials never forgot. That forgotten reception would become the point of no return, because one conversation held behind closed doors transformed royal unease into a determined campaign for removal. Every royal rupture has a moment that seems insignificant until history turns back and recognizes it as the beginning of the end. For Meghan, that moment came during a private charitable reception months earlier. The room was nearly empty, the public speeches were over, and only a handful of senior aides remained. What she requested that night alarmed the palace, not because of its immediate value, but because of the authority it appeared to claim. Meghan had joined the planning of an international youth initiative from California, believing it offered a path back into global service without returning to palace life. The project carried historic links to the official royal trust, a protected structure connecting family members to approved charitable work and ceremonial standing. Her role was meant to remain personal and informal, with no royal branding. Yet she believed her name inside the trust gave her a real voice. The tension broke at St. James's Palace, a royal residence used for official meetings and private receptions. Meghan approached Trust Secretary Sir Jonathan Hale after the speeches ended and asked him to issue a formal letter naming her as a continuing royal representative for the initiative. He refused. She answered that her name remained in the trust and could not be treated as meaningless. Sir Jonathan stayed calm. He explained that membership did not grant independent authority to speak for the crown. Meghan's expression hardened. She told him the palace could not preserve her name for appearances while denying her any meaningful role when service was involved. Then William entered and heard the final words. The prince warned that such a letter would blur private activism with official royal duty. Meghan heard control, not caution. She accused him of guarding a system that wanted her visible enough to carry criticism, but powerless whenever she tried to act. By morning, Sir Jonathan had written a confidential memorandum, a private written account prepared for senior decision-makers. He described the exchange as proof that Meghan's inclusion could support claims of royal approval. The document went to Charles, William, and legal advisors. Charles initially refused removal. He wrote that one heated conversation should not destroy a family connection. But more examples were attached. Weeks later, the king opened the expanded file at Windsor, reached Meghan's quoted words, "My name must mean something," and closed it without speaking. When Meghan learned William had witnessed the exchange, suspicion hardened into certainty. She demanded a direct conversation before the decision hardened. The argument could no longer remain buried inside memoranda and legal language. Meghan wanted an answer from William himself, and this time there would be no aids to soften what either of them believed. When Meghan finally faced William, the trust amendment was no longer a technical decision. It had become proof of every suspicion she carried about her place within the family. She believed he had watched, waited, and then helped erase her when the opportunity arrived. William believed he had protected a boundary she repeatedly challenged. Their conversation began under controlled voices, but it ended with a declaration neither could take back. Harry arranged the video call after insisting that Meghan deserved to hear his brother's position directly. No secretaries, lawyers, or communication staff joined them. The trust memorandum, a confidential written record used to guide royal decisions, had already shaped the amendment, but Charles alone had signed it. William knew one careless sentence could damage his bond with Harry. Meghan leaned toward the screen. "You did not protect the trust. You used it to prove I never belonged." The prince remained still, then answered that her request at St. James's Palace had sought authority the institution had never granted. She accused him of turning one difficult exchange into a case against her future. Harry cut in when William said Meghan had treated her name inside the trust as a mandate. He demanded that his brother stop describing his wife like an institutional problem rather than a woman who had served the family. The future king replied that the issue became personal because every boundary was treated as rejection. Meghan lowered her voice. That restraint made the words sharper. She said the palace had offered symbolic inclusion while withholding respect, leaving her visible enough to absorb criticism but powerless to define her role. William removed his glasses and set them aside. He said he had recommended clarification, not removal. Then Meghan asked the question that changed everything. "Did you oppose it?" William did not answer immediately. Harry stared at him. The silence delivered the truth before any words could soften it. He had not fought to keep her name. The prince revealed during the recorded call that Charles had rejected removal 3 times. The king changed course only after outside partners began citing Meghan's trust connection as proof of continuing royal endorsement. She demanded their names, but William refused, arguing that private organizations could not be dragged into a family war. That refusal convinced Meghan something remained hidden. Before ending the call, William warned that he had not drafted the amendment. A more powerful group had done it, and even Charles could not casually ignore its authority. Meghan had entered the confrontation, believing William controlled the decision, but she emerged facing something colder, a legal structure that had already decided her name was more dangerous than her anger. The removal carried Charles's signature, but the pressure behind it came from a closed circle of trustees, legal guardians, and senior royal advisors charged with protecting the crown's institutional identity. They did not speak in the language of betrayal or family pain. They spoke of exposure, precedent, and authority. Yet at the center of their cold deliberations sat a father being asked to turn his daughter-in-law into a legal boundary. Charles faced the Royal Trust Council in silence. The fictional body brought together independent trustees, the keeper of the privy purse, the official who manages the sovereign's finances, Sir Jonathan Hale, and 2 legal advisors. Their duty was severe. No one could use trust membership to suggest authority the crown had never granted. The council saw contradiction where the king saw family. Meghan could make independent commercial, political, and charitable choices, yet her name inside the trust might still be read as royal approval. That mattered because one misunderstanding could pull the monarchy into causes, deals, or statements it had not chosen. Sir Jonathan placed 3 options before Charles: remove Meghan, suspend her name indefinitely, or rewrite the entire trust so every non-working relative lost representational standing. The final choice would strike several family members and trigger a wider crisis. Charles stared at the untouched amendment. When Sir Jonathan called removal the narrowest solution, the king finally spoke. "Do you understand that your narrowest solution is still a person?" He reminded them that Meghan was Harry's wife and the mother of his grandchildren. The secretary lowered his eyes, but he did not withdraw the recommendation. Camilla met Charles privately afterward. She urged him not to confuse compassion with ambiguity. The queen consort argued that delay would deepen the wound. He answered that the monarchy kept handing him decisions that looked clean on paper and became unbearable once he imagined the faces behind them. The meeting ended in silence. Charles requested 5 minutes alone, walked to the window, and folded Meghan's original trust entry against the amendment. When the clock sounded, the council returned. The monarch signed without a speech. Then the safeguard emerged. Meghan could not be restored through marriage, reconciliation, or private approval. Reinstatement required full unanimous consent and a new sovereign instrument, a formal order issued under the monarch's authority. Harry's own status would be reviewed within 12 months. Before Meghan could answer publicly, invitations vanished. Letters were redirected, and one charity removed royal wording she believed had already been approved. The signature had ended the debate inside the council room, but outside it, Meghan was about to discover that losing a name from the trust meant watching doors close one by one. The first consequence arrived quietly: a revised email, stripped of its royal reference. Then came a cancelled invitation, a redirected request, and a private partner asking whether Meghan could still promise palace cooperation. Each change seemed small in isolation. Together, they delivered a brutal message. Charles had not merely removed her name from a document, he had changed how institutions, charities, and former allies were permitted to see her. Meghan understood that trust membership had never given her direct funding or automatic command. Its power was symbolic. Organizations saw her remaining connection as a possible path to prestige, access, and future cooperation with the royal household. Once the amendment took effect, palace officials circulated confidential guidance, meaning private instructions sent to approved partners, stating that she no longer represented the official royal trust in any form. The damage moved quickly. A youth leadership partnership rewrote its announcement hours before publication. Every mention of royal-supported cooperation disappeared, and Meghan was recast as an independent private advocate. She read the revised version beside the kitchen counter, reached the final paragraph, and slowly lowered her phone. "They have made me smaller without speaking my name," she said. Harry wanted immediate action. He urged her to expose the internal process before the palace controlled the story. Meghan refused. She feared that anger was exactly what officials expected, because one emotional statement could be used to prove the amendment necessary. Her restraint unsettled him more than fury would have. He could see the humiliation beneath her calm. Charles received confirmation that the guidance had gone out. The king asked whether Meghan had responded. When an advisor said she had remained silent, he looked uneasy. Her silence denied him the comfort of calling this another public battle. It forced him to imagine the private wound. Then one organization contacted Meghan directly. Its representative admitted that palace officials had discouraged reliance on her trust status for months, long before the signature. Soon afterward, Harry found a draft of the revised guidance dated 6 weeks earlier. Someone had prepared her exclusion while Charles was still considering his options. Harry printed the page and placed it before Meghan. He asked whether silence still made sense. She studied the date, folded the paper once, and answered that she would speak only after deciding what she truly wanted: restoration, recognition, or freedom. That answer could not come from lawyers or palace statements. It would emerge later that night, when husband and wife faced the fear beneath their anger. For the first time, the central question was no longer whether Meghan could reverse Charles's decision, but whether reclaiming her name would still be worth the emotional cost. Away from lawyers, palace statements, and family accusations, Meghan and Harry confronted the truth they had avoided for years. They had built a new life while still measuring every royal gesture as proof of acceptance or rejection. The trust amendment forced them to see that contradiction clearly. Fighting could restore a name, but it could not restore belonging. And in the silence of that realization, their anger began to change into something more powerful. Meghan sat beside Harry after their children had gone to sleep. Their phones rested face down, and no advisors waited for instructions. For the first time, neither was preparing a legal reply, a media strategy, or a message to the palace. They were simply husband and wife, facing what the loss meant. Harry admitted that Meghan's place inside the trust had felt like proof that Charles had not fully closed the door. The king remained his father, and that surviving connection had allowed him to believe reconciliation was still possible. Now the removal felt final. His family was moving forward, and he feared it was doing so without them. Meghan told Harry she had never valued the trust for money or ceremony. Its meaning was personal. Her name inside a royal structure suggested that the years she spent serving had not been erased. Losing it made those years feel reduced to a mistake the monarchy wanted corrected. Harry lowered his voice and apologized. He revealed during their private conversation that he had known palace officials were considering changes, but he had kept silent because he believed Charles would reject them again. Meghan felt the wound immediately, yet when she looked at him, she saw fear rather than betrayal. Meghan took his hand. She told him they could not keep allowing palace decisions to determine whether their life felt legitimate. Then she made the choice no one expected. She would not demand reinstatement. She would ask only for written acknowledgement that the amendment did not erase her service or diminish her place as the mother of royal grandchildren. Harry tore up the statement accusing the palace of retaliation. Meghan opened a blank document and began writing something calmer, centered on independence rather than grievance. Charles received the private request before any public statement appeared. Her refusal to fight for restoration unsettled him. The king agreed to send a personal letter confirming that the amendment concerned future authority, not past contribution. Then, before the next morning arrived, the confidential amendment leaked. Meghan and Harry had chosen restraint in private, but the world was about to turn the removal into a public verdict on loyalty, power, and who truly belonged inside the royal family. By sunrise, the amendment was no longer protected by palace walls. Its central sentence appeared across television screens, phones, and newspaper presses. Meghan's name had been removed from the official royal trust by order of the king. Britain did not see clauses, safeguards, or months of private hesitation. It saw a father-in-law, a former working royal, and a single line of text that seemed to declare the relationship officially over. Broadcasters broke into their morning schedules as the country tried to understand what had happened. The official royal trust, a fictional structure linking approved family members to charitable standing and ceremonial recognition, had never faced a removal like this. Meghan was out. Harry remained inside. That difference made the decision feel less administrative and more personal. Debate split almost instantly. Supporters called Charles's action necessary clarity, after years of blurred royal and private identities. Critics saw humiliation. The king had preserved his son as a future connection, while formally excluding the woman beside him. The Daily Chronicle captured the fury first. Its front page showed Meghan's former trust entry crossed out by a thick red line beneath the headline, "The King Closes the Final Door." Reporters held the paper outside Buckingham Palace, while crowds pressed against the barriers, arguing over whether the moment represented duty or cruelty. A veteran royal correspondent deepened the wound during a live morning program. In a recorded broadcast watched across Britain, she called the amendment not exile from a building, but removal from the monarchy's protected memory. The phrase spread within minutes. Meghan saw the image online and closed the screen. She did not cry. She did not answer the headline. Instead, she instructed her team to release only the calm statement she had written with Harry, refusing to let a red line define her voice. Charles watched the same replay at Buckingham Palace. The king told an aide to switch off the television, then asked whether the official clarification included his acknowledgement of Meghan's service. It did. The palace confirmed that the amendment concerned future representation, not the work she had already done. Outside Windsor, one group held signs supporting royal authority, while another left handwritten appeals for reconciliation. Duty and hurt stood side by side. Meghan's restraint changed the story. By refusing restoration, she turned exclusion into independence. Yet Charles still had one final message to send. Harry read the statement beside her and understood that silence had become their strongest answer, but Charles still carried the burden. The legal verdict had already been delivered, but the emotional verdict still depended on whether Charles could close the royal door without denying the humanity of those standing outside it. There would be no dramatic reversal, no late amendment restoring Meghan's position, and no carefully staged reunion pretending the damage had disappeared. Charles's decision remained in force. Her name was gone from the official royal trust, and the monarchy's boundary was unmistakable. Yet the final meaning of the moment was not determined by the removal itself. It was determined by what Meghan, Harry, and the king chose to do after the door had closed. Charles sent Meghan and Harry a private letter confirming that the amendment was final. The crown, meaning the monarchy as an official institution, could not preserve a structure where independent public activity might be mistaken for royal authority. Yet the king also wrote that Meghan's service, her marriage, and her place within the family's personal history could not be erased by a legal change. Harry read the letter aloud at the same table where Meghan had first received the removal notice. His voice faltered when he reached the acknowledgement of her work. She took the page, finished the final paragraph herself, and placed it beside the original message. The two documents carried different meanings. One closed an official door. The other admitted that closing it did not erase everything behind it. Meghan accepted the pain without surrendering to it. Her royal chapter had ended, but so had the exhausting wait for palace approval. Her identity would no longer rise or fall, according to whether her name appeared inside a royal register. She placed Charles's letter inside a private folder, closed it, and returned to the Independent Youth Project whose announcement had been rewritten. Harry understood something equally difficult. He could not force his father to treat marriage as a permanent institutional bridge. He remained wounded, yet he chose his family over a status Meghan no longer wanted restored. Charles later received confirmation that no legal challenge would follow. The king felt relief, but no triumph. He had protected the monarchy's boundary while making the family's separation official. The verdict was final. Meghan had seen the trust as belonging, Charles had seen it as authority. Both interpretations carried emotional truth, but only one could govern the institution. The monarchy kept its boundary. Meghan kept her voice. Harry kept loving his father, without abandoning his wife. For the first time, neither side needed victory, because both had accepted the permanent distance. And with that final acceptance, the conflict ended. Charles preserved the crown's authority, while Meghan stepped beyond its protection and claimed an identity that no royal signature could remove. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.